Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoQL webinar. Thanks for joining. We're going to wait another 30 seconds or so before we get started, just to let some late stragglers join in with us. But I wanted to welcome you and also let you know that you can chat with me, ask any questions, let me know things that you want to talk about more in depth in the chat section of the GoToWebinar control panel. So if you see that last section at the bottom. You can ask me questions. So while we're waiting, can somebody just let me know that they can hear me and see my screen through the chat section? That would be great. And then we can get started. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Sergio, YL, welcome. So also, I'd like to get an idea of what you guys are looking for. You playing more cash games, GPPs? You play more DraftKings or FanDuel? Just getting a better sense of what you're looking for help on. Also, if you just have specific features, things about RotoQL that you are having trouble with or want to learn more about, also let me know in the chat. Okay, Sergio, good to know. We'll definitely touch on exposure. DraftKings. All right, so what we're going to do is we'll start with DraftKings. We'll try to cover everything within that, and maybe we can touch on FanDuel for a little bit. But generally, in terms of just using the tool, I think we'll cover everything necessary. But please let me know if there's more. So, for you that are new to RotoQL, welcome. Certainly, we have all of these platforms you can build lineups for. Also, we're going to be building for the 5-game slate tonight at 7:30. Let's move to DraftKings. 5-game slate. Really, what that means when you're looking at all the players that are available, not that many games. So really, like there's not gonna be a lot of diversification in terms of which players are going to be selected. So really, you gotta nail the guys that you put in, especially in a cash game, because there's no room for mistakes when there's not that many different players available. So usually, what I do when I come in, I want to know, all right, who are the guys that maybe that I need to know about tonight, maybe due to injuries or news and things like that. So sometimes if I have the time, I'll pop open news and I'll get an idea what's going on here. You can obviously see that the updates are in real time. So this came in just updated 10 seconds ago. TJ Warren questionable. That's going to be big in the game against the Nets. I see Jeremy Lin, who's been off and on, but when he does play a lot, he'll get a lot of minutes. So you can do that, but usually I don't have a ton of time. So what am I doing? A quick pick, which is a newer feature that we added recently, and I want to go ahead and just immediately take this value slider, move it along around 5, a little less than that, to just see who are sort of the hotter players at different salary price points. So I'll look to the lower salary guys because I usually have a better idea of who I want from a higher salary. I can bring it all the way down too if you really want to get into the gritty. And we can see that we've got about 26 players, so it looks like there's still a lot of value to be had, even though there's not that many games. So we'll go ahead and I just definitely want players, even from a tournament perspective. I know you're trying to be contrarian, but you want guys who are playing minutes, 22, 24 minutes a minimum. That will bring the player pool down to 12. So these are like sort of the minimum price punt plays. Are there any that obviously jump out? We can look for all of the green indicators. We want all these lighting up or close to it, right? So let's go ahead and sort by value, and you can see that we're really big fans of Noah Vonleh tonight at 3,800. Vince Carter, PJ Tucker. So what I'll go ahead and do just to get me started, I add a couple guys in. So let's just add PJ Tucker and Vonleh. We'll get started that way. Also, you could go the other way. Look at the high salary players. You're obviously going to move your minutes up a little bit. and all the players that you like will stay in the player pool here. So, um, in looking at this, and sort by salary, you can see, just take a look at who is really in a good spot. And you can see Nurkic, great spot for him, though his price is pretty high, but that's pretty good. Melo, Chris Paul, Lillard. You got to think Lillard and McCollum against the Knicks. One of those two guys is going to have a pretty good night. So let's, between those two, I'll go ahead and add, who do we have projected higher? You got McCollum, so let's go ahead and add him too. So we've got a couple values. Let's see what the lineups are showing us. So we've got 150 generating right now. I mean, we'll go ahead and just keep the 150 going. Now let's make this 100 just so we can make the math easier. So got the lineup starting to pop up. Jeremy Lin, like I talked about before. The next thing I'll do, I've done a little bit of my own research and I have a sense of what I'm looking for tonight. I'll either pop open the games tab if I'm still like just trying to get a better sense of what's going on tonight. So I pop open games. I'm seeing. I want to see which games have high over unders. This is really important. You're definitely, especially if you're playing in a cash game. You want guys that are involved in these games because a lot of people are going to be looking at those. Similarly, in tournaments, you can't ignore them. So you see that this Phoenix-Brooklyn game, it's probably going to have a lot of people really interested because look at that over-under 227 as opposed to a lot of lower totals. So we're definitely going to want people involved in this game. And you can see from just the injury indicators at the bottom here for Phoenix, there's going to be some minutes to be had on the Suns. We've got Bledsoe out. What does that mean? He's been out. Let's see, he was out. He's been out for the season for about a week, right? So we can look at the past week, who's been getting a lot of minutes. I know Tyler Ulis has been getting a ton. Look at these totals, 43, 43, 40. And the salary is reflecting that. Still not all the way there, so I think this is probably a good spot for him. Let's just add him in, just see what we're seeing from there, because I definitely want him involved in some way. So got an idea of what games are going on. The trending players, which if you're subscribed to RotoQL VIP, you get access to this. This is what I'm checking throughout the day. Once I have an idea what's going on with the games, I'm monitoring this all the time. And so we've done some research already. Now, what is the general interest looking like today? And you can see Ulis. He's the number 2 player. Jeremy Lin, who we've talked about at 3. Also somebody that I think is really interesting now that he's playing. That salary could be a little depressed. There's a lot of upside there with him. So I'm definitely going to want, in a cash game, definitely want to be aware of these guys, have some of them in your lineups. Hopefully you can have more than a few of them. In tournaments, I'm looking at, obviously the players I like, but also are there places where I can pivot away from what everybody else is interested in. So, for example, let's look at the Phoenix. I'll be talking about the Phoenix-Brooklyn guys. Is there people from Phoenix and Brooklyn that we're not necessarily as interested in other players? Let's start with Phoenix. Let's look at Phoenix trending. And you can see that Ulis, obviously, Devin Booker. I don't think that it doesn't seem like the entire Suns backcourt is getting a lot of love. So if you're in a tournament, maybe you want to go ahead and fade Ulis for Booker. Let's see what we're seeing from him recently. Yeah, so this is a pretty nice tournament spot. If you're trying to be different at this, here, pivot off of Ulis. There's probably a lot of potential here. Though I think that in looking at this, it's going to be a tough sell, certainly. But this is definitely one way to pivot. Let's look at when he plays. They're not usually a favorite. They're short. Are they short underdog tonight? So let's look when they're a short underdog on the road real quick and see how Booker performs. Short underdog. So it's a short dog, meeting it about 50% of the time. It looks like they got results kind of all over the place. So, no, this is not recent results either. Most recently, oh, he did have a nice showing in Dallas. So, it's definitely somebody we can look at for tournament. Let's go ahead and add him in as well. Okay, also for Brooklyn, what are we seeing here? So with Jeremy Lin playing, I think there's a lot less interest in LeVert and Dinwiddie. But somebody like Trevor Booker, not getting a lot of minutes recently. So looking at this Brooklyn team, it looks like the main guys are getting love, but there's still positions to be had here. Karis LeVert could be interesting. So that's maybe somebody that we want to add to. So we've added some players to, mostly at the guard and center position. Let me go ahead and add Brook Lopez in this game. Yeah, that's one. There's a lot of people involved there. So we've got players all different position levels. We've set the favorite player bonus to 5 now. We want to keep in mind the favorite players bonus. How much do we want our picks to be influenced in the lineups? And we can see here is we've got it at 5. That's generally going to be a little. That means you're basically recommending them to be put in the lineup. If we want to have a little less influence and see where these players fall within the projections, I'd probably put this around 2 points. And you can see that even just in the optimal lineup, we had some movement. So this is more suggesting these players rather than having them just locked in. And then from here, I'll pop open exposures just to be sure that I'm not too exposed to one player and I can manage everybody who's involved. And Sahil's a huge proponent of managing your exposure across multiple lineups. We've got 100 lineups here. Let's make sure that we can hit a lot of different outcomes, not just a few. So I like to keep exposures down on a smaller slate like this. You're going to have to commit to some guys, 60, 70%. But if you're not sure with some players, you can put them at, 20, 30% and really get a nice mix. So, McCollum was somebody we liked. Quick pick, we'll keep him pretty high up. Put relatively high. And so we'll move these down so we get everybody under, 60. So Ulyss, that's a guy we move on relatively high. Jeremy Lin. That. Booker, remember, a tournament guy that if we're making these for tournaments. You're gonna want him spread around, but with those recent stats, he could really hurt you. So I'll put him, 20%. Alan Williams, we haven't really talked about him. At 5,700, it's not a bad price. So we got everybody around 70% now. When you're ready to bring your lineups over to DraftKings and FanDuel, we just go ahead and save the lineups now. You click on the bulk save when you're dealing with a lot of lineups, select all, apply changes to save. Now all these lineups will be in the save lineup section. So if you want to save these early in the day, come back later, make more lineups, you can do that. And then download the file to bring over to DraftKings, which I'll upload into my lineups. For FanDuel, Same thing, but you have to upload into each contest. So you'll be downloading. You'll have to. Yeah, I recommend for FanDuel making lineup builds for specific contests. So if you're going into one of their big tournaments and you're creating 100 lineups, 150 lineups, make those all at once together in RotoQL, bring them over, and then if you're doing for a cash game, do a separate build. So that's sort of the quick look at how to use RotoQL and a lot of the top tier features that we have here with our Pro and VIP plans. Let me answer some of you guys' questions, and we can kind of frame our the rest of the webinar around that. Wow, while I'll have to get to your question a little bit later after I answer some of these short ones. Does a trending player mean he's going to end up chalky? It's a good indication that these players are going to have ownership for sure. Chalky, I mean, I don't really. If chalky means that 70% owned, I'm not going to necessarily subscribe to that, but it just to give you a better sense of which players are being valued over others, and they're likely to be higher owned. Have to differ in basketball. Every time I back test with exposure, every time I lower exposure, I get lower scores. Why is this? Well, I don't know if you're getting lower scores across the board. I don't know if that should be happening, but when you start diversifying your outcomes, you're going to have lower scores from some of your lineups and higher scores because you have so many different players involved. If you keep it to a bunch of the same players, if everybody is in 80% of your lineups, then the outcomes are going to be relatively the same, a smaller distribution of scores. So, look, I mean, I'm not telling you exactly how to do it, but I think if you want to keep a bankroll going by trying out different strategies and then eventually figuring out one that works, you definitely want to test out different exposures. And if you go all in on a few players on a night, there's a large chance that it may not work out for you, especially in those big tournaments. So we want to have a chance to give it another go and make up some money if the worst thing happens. Let's get to Miles' question. Once in a while, the first line of Dutch brand have a lower value. So I didn't really get into the advanced option. Let me just walk through these real quick. So not all of these apply as important as in basketball, but if you do want to apply your injury level, meaning you only want players that are definitely going to play tonight. So this is like if you're playing in a cash game or in a situation where you can't change your lineups up to lock. If you change it to good only, it'll take all players that are questionable out of your lineups. Minimum projected minutes I think is really important. Actually, this is something that I do every time I come into the tool. I'm setting the minutes. If you're in a tournament, 22 minutes or so. We want these guys to have 21, 22 minutes minimum a night. So we get those players excluded from anybody who's not predicted to have less than that. And we've got a lot of these other options, and they'll scroll down the volatility meter here, which is what this while is asking about. And what the volatility meter does is you can move it over to the left, and it's going to give you more consistent players. If you move it over to the right, you can get lineups that are a little more volatile, meaning that they'll have a lot more players with high ceilings, but also low floors, so a lot of variation in what they can score. So I think what you're asking here is some of the lineups can be jumbled here. As you see, some of this is happening here. This has been made more for making a larger group of lineups. So yes, the if you're trying to look for one optimal lineup, you will have to scroll in between these options to find the best projected one. Um, that's something that that we've been looking to address is to have the top projected ones you add in the volatility. So definitely want to look for the highest projected lineup if you're just looking to put in one or two or three. But this has been made so you just get a more volatile batch of lineups. So if you're making 10, 20 or more, you can have a group with a higher ceiling and a lower floor. I mainly recommend using the volatility meter when you already have a core in place. You can see I've already favored a few players, and you're going to want to set the favorite bonus slightly higher so you can make sure that they're involved in these lineups. So if we're putting this at 10 points or so, right, we're definitely going to have all these players we favored and involved, and then the volatility meter will take care of the other players that are left within the lineups. Of course, you can lock these guys in too if you just want to guarantee that they're in, which I think is smart. So the volatility meter will fill out the rest of the group, and that's something that I definitely recommend. But modify those exposures. Any more questions? How many people are you starring, and can you star too many players? Well, let's see here. I would say that you can't star too many players. You just have to be aware of this favorite players bonus here. So if you're doing favoriting a lot of players, you may only want to bump up the bonus to 2-3 points. So you can have that equal bonus across all the players that you've added. And then in how many people am I generally starring? It depends on the day. I mean, on a smaller slate, I'm probably not favoriting as much as I normally do. Uh, but if you're on a bigger slate and want to just have a lot of different outcomes in those tournaments, I'll favor 10, 12 players to make sure that they're involved. But I would definitely recommend using the exposures more so than pay more attention to the exposures than who you're favoriting, because yes, you can favorite somebody, but how much are they actually, and so make sure they're involved, but how much are they actually in your lineups? This is where you're going to control all of that ultimately, and especially if you're making more than a few lineups, this is where you want to be. Got a few more questions. Boomer, another long question. Appreciate writing this out for me. Sure. Whittling down your base player pool. So, we did spend some time in Quick Pick. I think that's a good place when, especially on a big slate, to just kind of figure out those guys that you definitely need involved or people I haven't thought about. But I want to spend a little time in the player section because this is where, if you are familiar with a lot of the stats involved in basketball and things like that, we have a ton of that data, and you can shrink down the player pool using that as well. And since we're getting towards the end of the season, a lot of the rotations are changing. Some teams aren't really doing stuff for the playoffs, so a lot of the last 5 games data becomes even more important. So let's look at, first I'm going to just cut out anybody who's not playing, 20 minutes or so, right? I mean, let's make sure these guys are playing a decent amount of minutes. Then looking at, like I said, last three games versus this year, last 5 games is way more telling. So let's look at the last 3 games, the fantasy points per minute. And you don't really want to whittle down too much, but let's put it at 0.75. So now we're already at 38 players, right? And across all these different price points, I think that's a really nice place to be at. So we're looking at guys that are playing a lot of minutes. They're scoring a lot when they do get minutes. So from here, I'll probably look at the values. This is across both projections. If you have subscribe to DFS Guru, and you can look at across multiple projections which guys are getting a lot of projected scores, and I think that's really powerful because it's really hard to cover all the players. So which guys have a similar outlook tonight? I think you can see Jeremy Lin. There's a lot of love for both. Noah Vonleh. Who else? Marcus Sol, PJ Tucker. So these guys, I think, we're definitely gonna want involved in my lineup somehow. And then how much they're involved is based on your discretion. Another stat I like to look at is I don't know if I'll exclude from this, but look, if you're really trying to kind of build a core, the usage. This is usage. Now if you just hover over, it's usage rate last 5 games. So who on top of scoring and getting a lot of minutes is touching the ball a lot. And I think once you whittle down to this group, this is generally the players who have the best opportunities to score. I think we took out the majority of the lower salary players when we did that. Let's see if we bring this down since somebody in the yeah, it seems like as you go with salary, so does your usage. So just to keep some of these minimum salary guys involved, and this is how I'll, if I have a little bit of time to do my research, I'll go ahead and make those changes. You can certainly look at their consistency rating. If you're playing in cash, I'm going to want some of these players who tend to be more consistent, so higher negative number is for somebody who just tend to hit their averages. So Kawhi, always a Kawhi, Dame Lillard playing the Knicks tonight. That's good. And probably we've only been looking at sort of recent performance type of stuff here, but getting into the matchup of the Vegas stuff is also, it's easy. Jeremy Lin, this is why he's projected so high. High Vegas total, playing one of the worst defenses. Pretty much any of these guys in the top 4 here, Griffin, Ulis, Lopez, all one involved. And so that's sort of how I start. And how, if you, like we were talking about earlier, you want to add all these guys in and sort it out with the exposures later, just add everybody, head back to the optimizer, and clear out exposures and work from there. That's certainly another way to go. You guys have any more questions? We're going to hop off now. I hope this was helpful. But we have these webinars every week. If you're just getting started with us via DraftKings, welcome. Hope you enjoyed the trial. We have golf coming very soon, you can see, so we're really excited about that. So a lot of great things happening in RotoQL. I hope you guys use all the tools at your disposal. Definitely monitoring the trending, exposure. Use everything that you have here and really enjoy the tool. Yes, and baseball coming soon too. Only 10 days. So come back next week if you want to talk more. And if you have more questions, I'll send our email out. You guys can get additional support out through the week. And also I that can be reached through that as well. All right, everybody. Well, hope this is helpful. Have a great night. Good luck tonight.